running good to the 40, breaks it to the 50, takes to the 40, takes to the 30, to the 20, to the 10, to the 5, touchdown.
You brought up some names. That was kind of my next set of questions for you.
Okay.
And so these questions that I'm going to ask you, I'm going to just throw a couple names out there, the teams they're related to, and then I would like for you to kind of answer it in the terms of atmosphere and then from a competitor standpoint.
Okay.
So I'm gonna say Fitch Falcon Stadium,
Oh,
Andre Turner and
yeah,
Wally Hurley,
yeah.
and then
So,
I'm going to ask you about Asim Place and the Chris Emil combination that year, and then uh, Boardman. It, I just want your thoughts on Spartan Stadium when they're in those burgundy uniforms
yeah,
with the silver
yeah.
pants. And I don't know if it was still there during your time, but when I was coming through there, it was all about Black Watch defense. That was their big motto then.
Mm,
They actually used to wear the black jerseys, and they made them stop doing it. But
mm,
it was kind of mirroring or mimicking, Nebraska during
right,
their runs
right.
of those early '90s. So just give me some insight on some of those teams, some of those names, and then also, Warren Harding with Vanessa Provitt.
Absolutely, absolutely. So starting with the Fitch Falcons. So when Andre Turner and Walt Hurley, those guys were seniors my junior year. So luckily for us, we got them at YSU. They came to our stadium that year. And that was a tough battle too. I had a good game that game my junior year against those guys. Um, Physical, you had to bring. Andre was shifty, but he wasn't for me. I don't think he was one of the hardest guys to bring down. Walt, as big as he was, you had to make sure everybody was coming to the pile to tackle him, because if one person tried to tackle him, it might be an ugly situation for you. So you had to gang tackle that big boy because he was coming through the hole and he was coming through mad, and you had to bring everything you had with you to tackle that guy. He was a monster coming up the middle as that fullback for those guys. Now, on the flip side of that, talking about playing out at Fitch, we went out there my senior year, and we were fortunate enough to get those guys out there. Jay Holland had a great game. I remember he had a long touchdown pass right before the half, and had a couple of nice runs against those guys. And when we played out there, that was the first time Ursuline had beat Fitch at their stadium in about 13, 14 years, playing out there, because you go into that stadium, most people are coming out of there with a loss. And we were fortunate enough to get them my senior year out there. Flipping the script over to Boardman. And without question, I absolutely hated Boardman. I didn't like anything about Boardman. I didn't like the way they carried themselves. I didn't like their uniforms. I didn't like their stadium. I didn't like driving through there. It didn't matter anything about it. I did not like Boardman. Um, my junior year, we went out there, and I want to say, if I remember correctly, I want to say they beat us my junior and senior year, even coming back to YSU. And so, just definitely have some ill wills toward those guys. If you hear a lot of the stories about, some of the name calling and stuff like that. Fortunately for me, that wasn't something that I witnessed while I was playing against them personally. Again, but you always hear a lot of the stories over the years against other teams or even some of the city schools playing against the Boardman high schools, and having those things happen and take place, unfortunately. But I could at least say during my time and while I was playing there, that wasn't something that I ever witnessed. But they also had some good teams. I'll definitely say not teams to where they should have beat us, but for whatever reason, things worked out in their favor those 2 years, and they got us. Flipping the script to Warren Harding, like you said, Vanessa Provitt was a monster at receiver with the height and the speed and agility that he had. At the same time, I was fortunate enough to where I was too young to play against his brother Omar, which, if anybody knew Omar,
Oh
he
yeah,
was an absolute monster. And
yeah.
I can vividly remember being out there. I think I was a freshman. We go out there, we play at Harding, And I can still see to this day Omar catching a one-handed pass on the sideline over one of our guys. It may have been Trevor, and Trevor even told me the story about how Omar got him one time and scored on him. But Omar was every bit of an athlete as there ever was that came out of the city, Youngstown Warren area. Great player. They've had some great teams over there, but we were fortunate enough to go out there my junior year, and Jerry Howe had a great game at quarterback, running a lot of option read plays, and he broke a long run against those guys, and we were able to hold on against them and beat them. But unfortunately, my senior year coming to Youngstown State, they ended up getting us at the Ice Castle. It was
By a field goal.
By a field goal. I mean, and
Warren Harding beat us with the field goal.
Yeah, they were blowing teams out that year, and honestly, I want to say I think our coaches, and I hate to say this, but I can't point to what the specific situation was, but there was definitely something that took place or something that was said to where I just felt like even the coaches, I don't think really expected us to win that game. And so I can remember Vanessa Provit, he caught a pass on me down the field, and he didn't score, but he caught a deep ball on me. And they had, like I said, he went to Ohio State, and Lavelle Richardson went to Michigan State. They had a nice pair of receivers on that team. I want to say I think the quarterback's name was Walt Turner, if I remember
Walt
correctly.
Turner, yeah, Walt Turner.
Good athlete, solid quarterback, good speed. They had a running back. They called him the Chief. Physical.
Damian Coleman. Coleman.
Thank you, Damian Coleman. Anytime
He melted. I won't say any names, but he melted on ISO. Melted one of our linebackers.
And as big as he was, it would not surprise me. I'm have to see if I can go pull that tape out of the archives and check that out myself. The Chief, that's what we called him. And he was a monster. They had good teams, but again, not to where I felt like, they outplayed us. They won, but we had the horses to where we could have beat them. But again, they got us. It is what it is. But they got us that year. But again, only beat us by a field goal. In fact, our game against them was probably the closest game they had all season, because they were blowing teams out that year without question. Throwing the deep ball to Vanessa all the time, scoring touchdowns on everybody. And that was one thing. Yeah, he caught a deep ball on me, but we still kept him out of the end zone. And that's one thing. In fact, now that I remember that my senior year, during the Coach Smith era at Ursuline, and if anybody knows anything about Coach Smith, he was one of the most hard-nosed, toughest strength coaches, and he coached all the DBs and running backs, and he always had us ready to play week in and week out. And one thing he always told us was my senior year, we were the only secondary to not allow a passing touchdown during his tenure at Ursuline. And
really?
Absolutely. And if any of you guys know Coach Smith, if anybody that's ever watching this runs across Coach Smith, he always told us he was going to get us a gift for being the only secondary to not allow a passing touchdown. We're still waiting on that. We're still waiting on that gift. So if anybody runs across him, let him know. We're still waiting. But yeah, man. So like I said, my senior year was myself playing left corner. Billy Rose was our safety, solid safety for us. Eric Dubel was our physical corner on the right side of the ball, and not that guys were playing run and shoot on us like they are nowadays, but guys were still throwing the ball around a little bit at that time frame. But we were the only secondary during the Coach Smith era to never allow a passing touchdown. And now flipping the script, going back to Mooney. So Chris Emile and I have had the pleasure of knowing each other and playing against each other since we were kids, playing baseball at Gibson Field. And we always had battles against each other, playing championships against each other. Luckily for me, at Gibson Field, I got him more than they got us. But he got us his senior year when he was at Mooney, when I was a junior at Ursuline. But had some great battles with those guys. Same thing with Asim. Asim and I, grew up playing against each other at the YMCA leagues downtown, playing basketball, and in junior high when he was at St. Dom's and I was at St. Ed's, going against each other on the hardwood. And, we never played. I don't recall playing against him in football in middle school, not until we got to high school that we played against each other. But, again, have some great battles, have great respect for those guys, love those guys to death. I still stay in contact with them. Chris is coaching football now down at a school in the Carolinas. Asim is living down in Florida, doing well. So, again, not that we stay in contact through the phone, but through the luxury of social media, we stay in contact and interact through social media quite a bit still to this day. But love those guys to death. Had some great battles with them, and we get to still share stories every now and then on the social media, because there's a picture in the paper, Chris's senior year, where he's coming around the corner, and I think the caption says something along the lines of Ursuline players trying to gang tackle Chris Emile or something along those lines. And Chris, every time that I posted it one year, so every time it comes up in a memory, Chris is always chiming in with some kind of comment saying, "Hey, just so you know, I got around that corner, I got the first down before you tackle me." So, just little things like that with those guys, staying in contact, and even I can remember being at an awards banquet for all Steel Valley, and I can remember a scene talking to my buddy Adrian Jones, saying how he shook Adrian Jones up on a play where Age missed a tackle. So just to try and help my buddy Adrian Jones out, I chimed in. I said, "Yeah, you may have got him, but I said I can remember getting you, shaking you up a couple of times on a couple running plays, that I had where you weren't able to make the tackle." I said, "You're not going to talk about my man like that. That's my guy. So you're going to talk about him, but I'm going to get you back too." So, like I said, it was always fun and love with those dudes, playing against them and battling against them. Still have great stories when we do run across each other, but those were some great battles, man. The Steel Valley was, all love and respect for the city series, because I had a lot of guys that I grew up idolizing and watching. Primarily, matter of fact, the main guy that made me want to wear the number 21 was J.C. Penney, who played at East High School, one of the best running backs in my mind to come out of the city. JC's oldest brother and my dad worked together, and our families were real close. So when JC went and played for the University of Miami as a young 10, 11-year-old kid, every time Miami would come up and play against West Virginia or Maryland or Pitt, I'm riding over with his family and me and my dad going over to watch those games. And that's when, if anybody's watched the 30 for 30 about the U, during their heyday, he was playing there. So I'm running around as a kid in those locker rooms with the Alonzo Highsmiths, the Melvin Braddons, Benny and Brian Blades. I got pictures with Jerome Brown and autographs of those guys, and Jimmy Johnson when he first got to Miami and stuff like that. So, watching him play, he was hands down my first idol. Then you had the late great Derek Lewis, who was a great running back out of Rand School. He played with the Pitt. Ray Isaac, another one. Everybody called him Colonel. Loved watching him play. He was one of the main reasons that when YSU came calling, Coach Tress and sent Ray to my house to come help recruit me to Youngstown State, because my dad and Ray had a relationship from coaching over the years. So, Ray Isaac, Tony and Kenny Donaldsons, watching the Donaldsons play over at Rand. My cousin Jarvis Jones played at South High School, watching him play and going on to play at Akron. I can remember watching him play for Akron against Youngstown State. But so like I said, for me, playing football and having love for the guys in the city series, but those Steel Valley years were hands down in my mind some of the toughest battles that we've ever had, and some great players came out of those conferences as well, man, without question.
You mentioned that 94, your senior year, in it. For me, I thought defensively our team was really pretty good. I thought we were a very good defensive team, and you talked about the all SVC team. You're on it. I think Santagata's on it. I'm on it. Kuharik's on it. There's a lot of guys from a 5-5 team that, when you talk about Boardman, Fitch, Mooney, Harding, who was a champion, like on the defensive side,
we had
there's a lot of guys on that team.
Absolutely.
And what did that mean for you in terms of, you play for the Knights, you play in, in middle school, you kind of cut your path through your high school and it's finally your year, and then you finally achieved that SVC logo. How did that make you feel?
You know what? I'll be honest with you guys, with you and Ron, man. My senior year, I'll be honest, I didn't know if I did enough to make it. I felt like I had a better junior year than I did my senior year, and I didn't make it. I was fired up that I didn't make it my junior year, because I thought I had a good year. That was, I was coming into my own. Had a probably 3 or 4 interceptions my junior year. And, starting opposite of Trevor, that was the best thing that could have happened for me because guys were trying to stay away from his side of the field. So they were coming my way. So I was making a lot of tackles and plays and having interceptions and recovering fumbles and stuff like that. And I felt like I should have at least been worst case second team All Steel Valley going into my junior year. So when I didn't get the call for that, I was fired up, man. So that got me ready to go as a senior. I remember that year we went down to the North-South game. And I remember Trevor was supposed to play in it for whatever. Oh, he was getting ready for camp at Illinois. So Jerry Howe played in it. So myself, Coach Engel, Mark Engel, we went down to the game. And I said, you know what? That got me fired up to get ready to go play my senior year. And so, Coach Smith had me leading the way, in all the drills that year. And I was trying to do everything I could to help our team out on the defensive side of the ball. And like you said, fortunately, we had some solid players. Jared and Matt Guineri playing inside linebacker, Damon Dabney and Adrian Jones playing outside, Double, myself, and Bill Rhodes playing in the secondary. Larrity's playing on the D-line with Dan York and some of those guys. Dave Kuharik, may he rest in peace, was a great player for us on the D-line. So we absolutely had some monsters on the defensive side of the ball, and I think that's what kept us in majority of the games that we played in. And I can vividly remember Coach Engel calling my house, and he says, "Hey," he says, "What you got going on?" I'm just, sitting around. He goes, "Well, I want to tell you congratulations." I said, "For what?" I said, what's going on? He said, "Well, obviously you didn't see the paper this morning." I said, "Absolutely not." He says, "Well, you were selected, first team all conference." And I thought he was playing around with me. I'm like, "Are you serious?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, I'm being completely honest with you. Congratulations, you made first team. And like I said, man, I honestly didn't feel like, I think because how it was my junior year where everybody kind of stayed away from Trevor, so they were coming my way, gave me more opportunities. I think that's kind of how it was for me my senior year, where more of the opportunities went towards Duble's way because guys weren't coming on my side as much. Duble had he had more interceptions than I did at that our senior year. I had a couple plays, but I just never really felt like I did enough on that side to get that recognition. But clearly it was enough to keep guys out the end zone and keep guys from coming to my side of the ball. We actually started playing man. We were the first team to play man-to-man that year, where I was locked up on the other team's best receiver. And I don't know if they even played man-to-man after that, but I know my senior year was the first year we played man-to-man. And, I was fortunate enough to, again, like I said, not to allow any passing touchdowns. Vanessa did get one on me, but that was the only big play that they had on me that year. And I was fortunate enough to keep everybody out of the end zone. And, maybe that was enough recognition for everybody to realize that from the standpoint of, hey, he's playing man-to-man and they're not getting anything down the field on him. And, I didn't look at it that way, but apparently that's how I guess some of the others saw it. But, it worked out. I made All Steel Valley that year, was honorable mention all Northeastern Ohio and got some recognition there. But, one thing I do look back on that year, like I said earlier, I do wish I would have been more vocal when some of the turmoil was going on in the team that year. I do wish I probably would have played more with a chip on my shoulder. But like I said, that just wasn't my makeup. My thing was whatever we needed to do to win, wherever you needed me to play to win, that's where I was going to be and that's what I was going to do. And, that was kind of my mindset and my mentality. And my parents always raised me to kind of be one of those guys, act like you've been there before. So, if I made a play, I wasn't coming out there trying to showboat or show out or anything. I was a hand the ball to the official kind of guy like Barry Sanders was. I wasn't trying to dance and hot dog or none of that stuff, man. And plus Coach Engel probably would have had my behind for doing something like that anyway. But like I said, man, I was just doing what I could to help us win and having the ball playing out there with guys like you and the rest of the brothers on the team, man. That's what it was all about for me coming up.
So as you put the cap on high school and you're starting to wonder where you're going to go or end up afterwards, did you get various offers or interest, or was YSU what you were honed in on from the beginning.
So you know what? It's Trevor. Watching Trevor go through the process, I think helped me get some of that recognition. I got calls from the armies and navies, even before Youngstown State started calling me, and I think a lot of that had to do with the early success we had our senior year. Because one thing I used to always ask Trevor was, how do you know when these teams truly have an interest in you? Because it was all new to me. And, guys weren't going to all the camps like they have all over the place, at least not as frequently like they do now. So Trevor was always telling me while he was at Illinois, he says, when they start calling you or when you start getting a lot of handwritten letters, that's how you know that there's a serious interest. And so, I had Illinois because that's where he went to school. I had those guys calling me quite a bit. I had a couple calls from Kansas. I had a lot of letters, handwritten letters from Tennessee. I even had a lot of handwritten letters from Michigan. The difference was, though, with Michigan, they always wanted me to come up to their camp to get a closer look at me versus just giving me a true opportunity from an offer standpoint. But with the way things kind of tailed off towards our senior year, we started out the gate strong. A lot of those schools were calling and sending letters, and then we started to kind of go on our downslide. A lot of that stuff started to kind of fade away. And a lot of the success that I was seeing in the beginning part of the year, I wasn't seeing a lot of that same success or wasn't making the same type of plays on the back end of the year like I was making on the front end of the season. So I can remember Mark Snyder calling me, he's talking to me and he's telling me, he says, Jabari, he's like, I'll be honest with you. He's like, I didn't think you were going to be here. We found out that, we had an opportunity to get you. He said, we jumped all over it. Coach Tressel came up to the school. Coach Engel called me out of class. I'm sitting there talking to Coach Tress. He's sitting out there with his, black trench coat on, talking to me. And I just remember him. I thought for whatever reason before I met him that he was a taller individual. I felt like I was already as tall as he was at that time. And I had a chance to talk to him when he came up to the school. And, they brought me down for a visit. And there were some other smaller schools that wanted me to come up for visits. But when things kind of went by the wayside with some of the larger D1 schools, and that's where I started turning my focus to Youngstown State. Ray Isaac came to my house and was sitting in the living room talking to my mom and dad about, why she wanted to make me a offer for a full ride. And, the rest was history. Like I said, Coach Snyder brought me down there, had me coming down every weekend to the games that they were at home. Coach Haycock, again, was a defensive coordinator at the time. He was, calling me and having me come down to the games and talking to me. So after watching those guys play in our backyard and playing in 4 straight national titles versus some of the other small Division I schools that were maybe going to, a Liberty Bowl, one of the smaller bowl games. I'm like, man, I'm not trying to play in no small bowl game like that. If it's not one of the bigger bowls, I'd rather play for a national title. And so when YSU started being serious with me and coming up to the school and calling, that was all it took. I got down to the visit. Coach Tress had me in his office and was talking to me. And like I said, he was telling me from day one, we want to bring you in, we want to redshirt you. But if we get the opportunity, if we have an opportunity where we have to play you, that's what we're going to do. And he told me that. I was sold. It didn't take much arm twisting on that one for me, because like I said, I watched these guys playing 4 straight national title games. That's what I wanted to be a part of, what they were doing. And so sure enough, that's how things happened to where I went to Youngstown State.
So let me ask you this, and I think everybody during that time in the whole Mahoning Valley watched what happened with YSU and the national titles, and everybody kind of jumped on board with that. But for me, I growing up on the north side and only being a few blocks from Stambaugh, then going to Ursuline, like, I don't know. I think there's a different connection for me. You know what I mean? Like, there were some basketball players that lived right next door to where I lived. Sure. I just felt like those were the guys that I always idolized. Mm-hmm. Those were kind of what did it feel like for you growing up on the north side, being an Ursuline guy, and then having the opportunity to go play really, a mile down from your house,
right.
Or so. How did that feel?
It was amazing, man, because just like you said, those were the guys that you idolize just like I did. You know, I'm watching, you know, Leon Jones, who kind of like how everybody down here looks at the Ohio State guys like the AJ Hawks and the James Laurinaitis and the Troy Smiths. That's how I was looking at, you know, Leon Jones, Jermaine Hopkins, Trent Boykins, and stuff like that. And you know, it was an honor and a pleasure to be able to go down there my freshman year, and especially with that senior class that were when I was a freshman, knowing what they were a part of, and to be able to line up in the huddle with those guys and make tackles with Leon Jones, who was one of the greatest linebackers to ever come out of Youngstown State, to be able to line up and you know, make tackles and get in the huddle and line up with the late great Jermaine Hawkins. You know, playing along those guys, the Tom Dillinghams, those guys were, in my eyes, absolute monsters. And just to be a part of it, man, I mean, when I'm in the huddle with those guys as a freshman, my eyes are like this big because I'm like, am I really in here with these dudes, you know, as a true freshman? You know, because like I said, I wasn't really expecting it. I knew I was ready for it because Coach Smith got us prepared to be ready for something like that. But I didn't really expect it that year because of the way the coaches were telling me they wanted to redshirt me. And lo and behold, we had a couple similar to Ursuline, had a couple injuries where guys went down in the Kent State game. Here I am starting the home opener my freshman year against Stephen F. Austin as a true freshman, you know, huddling up with these dudes, playing at the Ice Castle with the Block Y on my helmet. And, you know, just trying to emulate and represent what they were able to do all those years prior to me getting there, and trying to do what I could to, you know, add to that legacy as well. So it was great, man. One of the best experiences being able to ride on the bus. I can vividly remember those guys telling me, hey, appreciate what you have in front of you, because a lot of freshmen don't get to ride on the first bus with these guys. You know what I mean? That's not something everybody gets to do coming in and playing right away as a true freshman. And so I enjoyed it. You know, had some great times down there, even with the injuries, had some great times, but and played with some great guys. We had a couple guys that played in the NFL. Tim Johnson, I was his host when he came to Youngstown State. He still calls me the best recruiter in Youngstown State history because he came there, was an All-American for us, was one of the all-time leading tacklers for the Youngstown State, played at the Raiders, also played at the Ravens, but played in the Super Bowl with the Raiders against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Who else? Russell Stuvance, kid out of McKeesport, Pennsylvania. Younger kid, you know, great player, good speed, was a solid physical player. You know, he was younger than I was, but he was able to go and play with the Steelers on their Super Bowl team when Jerome Bettis was in his last year when they played in Detroit. So, you know, still staying in contact with those guys. We just a couple months ago had our 25-year anniversary of our 97 national title team. So it was great just being able to catch back up with those guys, reminisce over some of the old days, and, you know, just be around each other. And that's the one thing people always ask me now, do I miss the game? And I don't necessarily miss the game as much, because when I watch football on TV now, the game looks violent to me. So from that standpoint, I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't miss that part of it, but just being around all the guys, the camaraderie, being around. One thing Ohio State talks about all the time is the brotherhood. And for people that weren't a part of a program, they don't necessarily understand it. But being a part of a program like a Ursuline or Ron, like you're a part of a Cheney program, knowing those bonds that you build with those guys, putting in the blood, sweat, and tears from the early days and during two-a-days and sometimes triples, and going through all the training camps and the road trips and stuff like that, man, building those bonds over the years, that's what it's all about. And, you know, being able to go back home like I was for that 25-year anniversary and playing with those guys that I looked up to before I got there, was an absolute blessing. Absolute blessing.
Yeah, when you talk about that brotherhood and those bonds, you know, once you get to that age where you're able to look back and you know, assess things, and you know, for some people it goes as planned and you reach all the goals and exhaust yourself. For others, you know, some people get a cup of coffee, some people their career ends with those unfortunate injuries, or you don't get that resolution and that satisfaction.
Right.
But the one thing that you don't forget is, you know, the friendships that you make along the way, And then, some of those things that happen outside of even the lines,
Right.
those are the memories that kind of stick in there the longest and the hardest. And, it's a special privilege to, have that opportunity, regardless of what level it is or
100%.
how well your team does or does not do. For those that never have that experience, they don't really understand, how much work is put in there, how much time is invested in there. And it's only a select few that get to go through that process, have that experience,
Right.
and be able to connect with others that have been able to do the same thing. And you kind of just understand it without even saying it. So when I'm hearing you bring up those names and those times and those experiences, it just puts me in the same frame of mind in that space. And those were some of the best days of my life. And you just know you're not going to be able to duplicate those again. So you have to hold on to them as memories.
It's the truth, man. It's the truth. Because I tell people to this day, it doesn't matter whether you're playing D1 or 1AA, which it was called for us at the time, or D2, D3, D4, whatever. If you're able to be a part of something like that, regardless of the level, you're doing something right. And it takes a special person to be able to do that, because that's not something everybody can do. And that's not something everybody has the privilege to be able to participate in. So just to be able to have those opportunities and to build that bond with your teammates over the years and go through the blood, sweat, and the tears of everything, man, it means something. And so when you come get the opportunity to come back around and see those guys and just, flash back on, like you said, those moments, not even in between the lines, but hey, remember this time at so-and-so's house when we were partying and blah, 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 and this, that, and the other happened, or, just hanging out and we saw this, that, and the third, that means something, and that's something nobody can take away from you. And like I said, again, it doesn't matter what level it was that you played in, but just to be able to have those opportunities, that means something. That absolutely means something.
Yeah, and to that point, it's been, I don't know, 30 years, 25 years since we've spent a little time together, and the fact that you share a little bit of that experience, you can kind of pick up right where you left off because of the things that have that you've been through. And I think that's, unique to the sports arena, the experience arena.
Right.
I kind of have one more question, and so, and this was what I was thinking about at the very beginning of when we started talking. You said every kind of team that you've been on has been in a success or winning or approaching a championship and so on. And I think back to your success in junior high, your success at Ursuline, you're in the playoffs in high school. You go to YSU and you're involved in a national championship, and I think 2 runner-ups.
We won my sophomore year in 97, and then we lost my senior year in 99.
Okay. So, you go to another great experience. And so for me, like, I was thinking about this. How did that experience of winning at a high level, being successful at a high level, being around a Coach Angle, being around a Jim Tressel, being around a John Haycock, translate into the success of your life now, kind of as a man, as a father, as a professional?
Good question. The biggest thing I would probably say to that is just the dedication, the work ethic that it takes to be a champion, because it's not easy. The drive and the determination that you have to have, but also too just the leadership. If you have good leaders, and if those guys can motivate you to get everybody on the same page, there's no telling what you can accomplish. And I try and take that team mentality. That's one thing that all those teams that I played a part of had in common. It was never about one individual. It was all about us coming together as a team, regardless of what it was, whether it was my T-ball team at the first year I played at Gibson Field, all the way up to, our national title team at Youngstown State in 99. It was about everybody coming together as a team, playing for each other. It was never playing about the individual, because when you played about the individual, that's when things start to go awry and go downhill for you. And so I feel like, some of the teams that I was a part of, some of that I think played a part in us not doing as well as we could have in some of those instances. But for all of the other teams, just to kind of run down the list real quick, when I played at Gibson Field, my 2 years at T-ball, we played in the championship game both years. We won my first year, lost my second year. You go down the hill to the 9 and 10-year-old age range. We played in back-to-back championship games, won them both. Then we move up to the big field, the 11 to 13-year-old group. My first year at the big field, we were the youngest team. We ended up coming in third place. Then my last year at Gibson, we went undefeated and won it. So that was all my time at Gibson. Then fast forward to playing Little League for the Northside Knights. We were 5-0, won the championship there. Northeast Catholic, 7th and 8th grade year. We lost one game in 2 years. Won the championship back-to-back there. Ursuline, we were co-SBC champs my sophomore year. And now, granted, we didn't win the championship my junior year or sophomore year, but had a successful team where was a part of the very first team to ever make it to the state semis at Ursuline. Then, had some dissension amongst the team, unfortunately. Our senior year, we went 5-5. We didn't have a losing record, but we were 500. Then get into Youngstown State. We just lost a lot of leadership from that team the year before in 94. So coming in 95, my freshman year, we were 3-8. That's the only losing team that I was a part of. My second year, we were 8-3. Should have gotten the playoffs that year. We were an independent team, so the NCAA didn't. I say the NCAA kept us out of the playoffs because we knew if we would have got in, we would have caused some damage. But we were 8-3, didn't get into the playoffs my sophomore year, and then going into 97, that was our motivation. And we joined the conference in the Gateway. We made it through the Gateway Conference, won the national title 13-2 my junior year. Going into my fourth year, because those 2 years, I'm set 97 to 98, dealing with the shoulder injuries. So we were 6-5 my fourth year. And, that was coming back off my second surgery. And then I was at a point in my career where I was done with school at the end of my fourth year. I could have graduated, which at the time, most guys aren't graduating in 4 years playing athletics. Most guys are taking that fifth year to graduate, but I had all my credits done. I could have walked away, but I wanted to come out with the guys that I came in with. And so a lot of that time I used towards, if I ever decided to go back and get my master's, I'm already more than halfway there because of the time I spent getting my grades my fifth year. But we came back, gave it a great run my last year, had another great team, and again, just had great leaders. And that's what I would attribute all of that to, having guys leading the way, showing us what we needed to do, having great coaches to keep us on the straight and narrow path, not letting anybody, get out of pocket to where, they were always able to reel people back in if it came down to it, but most instances it didn't. And that's one of the things Coach Tress always talked to us about in college was, remember who you are and what you represent. And that's one of the things I do each day with my girls. When they go out to school, I'll send them little messages. Hey, have a great day. Remember who you are, and my son doesn't have a phone yet, so I can't send him that message, but my daughters have their own phone, so I can send them their messages when they're out at school. But, but that's one thing I take from Coach Tress all the time is, I tell them all the time, remember who you are, because you represent more than just yourself. It's not about you. It's about your family, and because a lot of times, I tell my kids, hey, your last name is Teague. So when you go out and you're out in the public eye, they may not necessarily remember your first name. Oh, that's that Teague kid that was doing such and such and such and such, whether it was good, bad, or indifferent. That's what they're going to remember. So anytime that name comes up, that's what they're going to attribute that particular situation to. So that's why I always tell them, remember who you are, because you got people looking at you even when you don't realize it. But even in my job to this day, I try and lead by example. I'm not going to ask my guys to do something that I wouldn't necessarily, do myself. I'm going to roll up my sleeves and get dirty right there with them to show them, hey, this is the way we want to make things happen. And, try and show them by example, this is what it takes to be successful. And we had those coaches that did those things for us. And that's what I try and emulate, whether it's with my family situation or even from my job standpoint.